Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, by virtue of the win on Saturday in Ames, Iowa, could November get a little bit more interesting for the Red Raiders as it relates to the Big 12 race? We'll get into what has to happen for that to be the case today on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you as we are turning the page from the weekend that was and looking ahead to what is now upcoming. Should be a great environment from Jones Stadium as the Red Raiders prepare to host the Buffaloes of Colorado. And by virtue of your big win on Saturday over Iowa State, obviously, we know some things are now in place as it relates to a bowl game as you punch your ticket and you get eligible there. But wanted to pick your brain a little bit today about what still will be a rocky path to this, but possibly some opportunities restored to make things a little bit more interesting as far as the conference race is concerned. You obviously knock one team from the category of unbeatens in Iowa State, still one remaining in BYU. But am I dreaming a little bit too big of a dream to think that there is a thing or two back on the table that makes it a little more interesting in the Big 12 Conference? What do you think about that part of the conversation as you hadn't tapped out just yet going into the weekend, but, man, a lot of things are going to have to happen and still do. But maybe there's a little bit more of a likelihood, depending upon what happens this week with the Buffaloes and some things beyond that, I don't know, Texas Tech could actually get back into that interesting November that we were clamoring for, right?
Yeah, and you say turn the page and all that. I'd kind of like to just read this book again from last weekend. It's because I mean I will be honest with you. I've watched the Seinfeld hot tub episode about 1 million times when Elaine invented the Himalayan walking shoe, and Kramer he like did the mental clock, and the marathon runner was late and all that stuff. I mean, I can't get enough. So I'd replay the Iowa State loss or the, I guess for them, but in the Texas Tech win over and over again if we could. But what it did, Cowan, though, because of that, and I think because of Houston pulling off quite the upset, it does make this weekend's game relevant in the conference race. And this is why I said to you way back when we started this little stretch here, it was all about this 3-game stretch, and there were some back-to-back road trips there. There was this home game versus Baylor you had. And it's like, okay, if you win 2 of 3, you've really put yourself up. But the one that is going to move the needle the most is the Iowa State game because of where they are in the standings, where they are in the rankings, and all that stuff. Because you can't get to where you ultimately want to go unless some other teams, come back to the pack, or you beat them head to head and have the tiebreaker and all that stuff. And then lo and behold, you lose the two that on paper would have been the easier ones or the ones to manage. You go pull off the hardest one. I mean, as my man Cowan would say, typical Tech, right?
The sunny side of typical Tech. Yeah.
Yeah. That.
We like this side.
Because you get this done in Ames, you set yourself up for a relevant game. Now, and I would say not quite the same, but it's pretty close in that if you want to get to where you want to go and have a shot at Arlington, like a win over Colorado, because we're talking head-to-head victories and we're talking tiebreakers, and we're also talking about gives them another loss because they are ahead of you in the standings, that this is what I say they're ahead in the standings. Actually, I think that, they've got you've got one more conference loss than they do, so you need to give them their second.
Yeah, I probably should have said this already, but just for those who are not looking at a standing sheet, BYU 5-0, Iowa State, Colorado both 4-1, and then Tech and K-State both 4-2 as far as league play goes.
Yeah. So you need BYU. I mean, if BYU wins another game or two, like they may kind of put one spot out of reach, and everybody may be playing for the second spot for a trip to Arlington. But my point is, you now have a game that is sold out. It's been sold out because of all the your excitement about your program, about the curiosity about Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and all of the Buffs have got going on. Well, they're better than everybody would have thought. You because of your winning names now created a situation where this game is very meaningful, and because like a result like Kansas State going to Houston, and I know we want to always crown Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson, and everybody wants to crown them. And like Dennis Green's like, you want to crown their ass, crown them. But that whole deal. But yeah, maybe get the sizing on the crown fit for some other folks too, because Kansas State, this was a bad loss.
Oh, that was a bizarre loss, man. I mean,
and you knew Willie Fritz in Houston. Willie Fritz is a really good coach, and they were going to play spoiler. You look up now; they're 4-5.
I know. Are they figuring something out?
Well, and they could do this to some other folks down the stretch too. My point is that if you get it done this weekend, don't just act like you're going to need just too much help from elsewhere, because this thing's getting wild every week. But you need to use the previous 2 weeks prior to the Iowa State game as motivation and get some things figured out and see if you can't. You got to manage a bye week situation, and you got to manage maybe trying to cover one of the best wideouts in the country and one of the best quarterbacks in the country throwing to him that can just extend a play for 25 seconds. So that'll be fun over the weekend. So if you have any hair, you may pull it all. I'll pull some of it out this weekend trying to defend these guys.
There'll be some of that, I have no doubt.
It's just that's just what they are.
Yeah.
And it's going to be frustrating. So, but it's meaningful, and that's what. Not that you got here in the way that we wanted necessarily, but again, we kind of talked about that. You want to play meaningful games in November. Well, here you are.
Don't you mean Jovember? We're back to Jovember. The spirit of Jovember is alive.
I love it. Yes.
It's like nobody was even believing in old St. Joe and Jovember just a week or two ago. But here we are. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because who knows what's to come in the Big 12 Conference. And BYU, who's in the Catbird seat right now, has a rivalry game coming up this weekend with the Utes, who have been obviously disappointing. But I don't know. You throw some things out as far as a game like that is concerned, you might. And I still think it's really interesting to look at the other two not named Colorado that are most interesting, that being Iowa State and K-State. They've still got to crack at one another, obviously, at the end of the season. But
which guarantees somebody in that little duo gets their third loss.
Somebody's going to take something. So, and it's not like, and we talked about this with Iowa State going into the week. If they were to get past Texas Tech, I mean, it's not a gauntlet of Big 12 opponents they have left to run, with all due respect to K-State at the very end. But you got Kansas on the road, Utah on the road. Iowa State will get Cincinnati and Ames between those two road contests before they host the Purple Wildcats for the Farmageddon matchup. But some interesting things could happen. But really, I mean, Texas Tech to continue to make November interesting, Chris, obviously you got to be able to find a way to pull off what would be a slight upset at home. I think I saw the Red Raiders on FanDuel opening up. It's about a 3.5-point underdog as Colorado comes to town. But you've gotten here and have restored some interest to the month via this huge win on the road over the Cyclones of Iowa State. Chris, I just wonder what you make to this point in the season of the Big 12 in general, because obviously chaos has been the name of the game. We knew there would be some really tight margins. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Fixes tired fast. Whether you've got a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you get your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5 Hour Energy shot. 5-Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5-Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5-Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Even better, stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day, boost your life, and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. We knew there would be some really tight margins. It would be parity HQ as far as college football is concerned. And, for me as a Tech fan, I don't care about the league in any way, shape, or form unless it impacts Texas Tech. And typically, the Red Raiders have not been in any position to even be impacted. So at the end of the day, who cares? I just want to see entertaining ball games. But as far as the Big 12 resume nationally, obviously the Red Raiders put a dent in it, doing what they did on Saturday against the Cyclones. What's the general take of yours on the league as we now have this new iteration for the first time through? The preseason projections have been turned upside down and shaken all around. But what have you made of the conference so far?
Yeah, and I did say earlier that Kansas State and Iowa State, somebody would get their third loss. Obviously, Iowa State just has the one loss, so if they lose that game, it would be their second if they don't trip up between now and then. But yeah, I hear the narratives. I think there's some people out there fighting the narrative that when you beat up on each other, your league is very average. When other leagues beat up on each other, it's like, well, it's a gauntlet. It's so, and I certainly understand that component. It's just funny because and I guess you've kind of earned the right to get the benefit of that doubt in basketball with, beating up on each other. And there's a lot of respect given. And it's just, and you've got, here's what else you have too, as it relates to the way that people talk about it nationally. ESPN has become like this ESPN, College Game Day is very slanted toward the SEC and all that. They're in bed with them. They're linked up via TV contract. Fox is doing the same thing with the Big Ten and all that. So even these pregame shows that everybody used to love and used to kind of try to cover the scope of the sport really are now, based on two separate leagues. And you fight that perception as the Big 12.
Sort of just got to take care of your own business, right? Like you're not going to topple this media narrative without just wins. I mean, that's it.
And it's funny, correct. And I think what is fascinating is that I think you get docked in the public opinion nationally, regionally, you get docked a bit because some of these teams that weren't predicted to win this league are now winning it.
Right. And we as media members were very smart, and these teams are supposed to be good. So the fact that they're not must mean that the league is bad instead of us just being wrong. It's kind of
you knew exactly where I was going with that. Oh, that's exactly right. Well, I mean, how good could that league be? I mean, BYU was picked to finish toward the bottom. I mean, come on, man.
Right.
And so I just whereas when Vanderbilt does something, it's like unbelievable. Like, what kind of, I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Well, and the gauntlet you're talking about, like somebody comes up and beats one of the higher ranked or better teams. Oh, that just shows the league is average in the Big 12. Meanwhile, otherwise, everybody, you can't even fathom what it's like to go deal with South Carolina on the road. A team that beat Old Dominion by 4 points this season. Oh, God, how could we even fathom such a – yeah.
This past weekend this past weekend made the committee's job much more difficult or clouded the picture a bit. But I think you're going to get several more weekends of this, including conference championship game weekend and all that stuff. I think it's just going to be a bit of a mess. But it because of some of the upsets, because there was only 6 undefeated teams going in the weekend, and leave it to a couple of Texas teams to knock off 2 of those. Shout out to the Ponies there in Dallas, knocks off Pitt. The Red Raiders obviously knock off the Clones in Ames, Iowa. And now there's just 4 remaining. I believe, left undefeated in the country. But yeah, I'll be honest, I did think in the back of my mind, I'm like, when they take that touchdown from Coy Aikenoff, I'm like, you're going to have to beat, the league would have a lot of reasons, probably, I don't know how many millions of reasons to want to see Iowa State do well toward the end of the thing. So when I thought, when they take that touchdown off of the table, it's like Mark Mangino said years and years ago in a post-game press conference. He just is like, I got 3 letters for you. You know what this is all about. And everybody was like, what's he talking about? he's like, BCS. And he was basically claiming the league was trying to shorten his team's chances to do this and take care of another team. I think that was wearing burnt orange that day and getting into the BCS. I think that's who they were playing. Either them or the Crimson and Cream team in Norman. But yeah, you outlined. As far as the Big 12 goes, I do think it's going to be difficult for you to get 2 bids in. And the way that may need to happen, honestly, is for BYU to roll into the conference championship game undefeated and then lose, and give the automatic bid to the loser of that conference championship game, which would earn the right, and then maybe BYU. That to me on paper is the best way that I could see that you can get a second bid in this deal, but we'll see. For the Red Raiders, though, it's going to have to take a win over the Buffs. And keep in mind, folks, just as an aside, Taj Brooks, he's got, I don't know how many yards it is, but it's like 125, 131, something around that range, where if he eclipses that, I think he breaks Byron Hanspard's record this weekend, I believe it is.
I think it's 121 is what I saw.
Okay, 121. Okay. Yeah. So it's there's a lot, for entertainment value. There's a lot going on this coming weekend in the LBK, and I'm here for it. And by the way, you got a couple of hardwood twists and turns coming up before we get to that point. So a lot going on this week. Crossover season is here.
Chris, you did punch your bowl ticket with this win on Saturday against the Cyclones. I know everyone involved, literally everyone involved, from the head coach, the athletics director, down to the tiniest Twitter burner account. Everyone involved has much higher aspirations than just punching bowl tickets. But as I've talked about over the last couple of years in the McGuire era, I do feel like that is a baseline pulse for the program that has been restored, which you couldn't even get to prior to that. Obviously was not a given as it was once upon a time. So for that reason, I will once again applaud the program for punching their ticket again and keeping that baseline pulse going. And maybe you improve your standing as far as potential bowl selection if something crazier doesn't happen than where you've been over the last couple of years. So I think that could be, again, another exciting way to cap the season. And who knows where you'll wind up if you're able to stack some more wins.
Yeah, I mean, this was a byproduct of the win that you get in Ames, and it's funny because it's back-to-back trips to Ames when you've been able to punch that ticket. With and Iowa State, man, they just got to be pulling their collective. I mean, it's like Texas Tech again. Like, what is being done to me here? Which I love it, because there's just some things with some like I feel like Kansas State's probably like, yeah, we don't have to worry about Texas Tech. And there was a time when we had to worry about Iowa State like that, but you kind of flipped it a little bit. Bowl games, though, are the fact that you've guaranteed yourself to extend your season. In some ways, they are more important now, depending on how you look at it, than ever before, because of how many changes there are with these rosters and the opportunity to develop youth and to get youth to play and get youth more time and just be involved in the machine a bit longer because of how much changeover that there is. I heard somebody say, and I get this point, but I heard somebody say the other day, some of these teams that didn't have good seasons, like your Cincinnati, your Arizona States, some of those were using as an example, and Indiana a year ago, that I heard use that as an example. Like when they don't have a good season, they don't go to a bowl game, they are getting a huge advantage in being able to address the portal, focus all their attention on the portal, and not multitask and all those things. And they've got a good handle on it. Whereas a team that's playing well, conference championship games and the playoffs, they're having to kind of look at it off to the side, and they can't solely focus on it and all that stuff. I mean, and I get that, because the analogy was like, this is the advantage you get when you don't do well. It's like the you get the top picks in the draft. You know, like the draft order is set to your advantage, and that's the way it kind of creates some parity. I just think that the advantages of extending your season and playing in these extra games far outweigh. You better take advantage of not going to a bowl game with the portal, or recruiting, or whatever you're doing, or you won't get too many more of those chances, I guess. But yeah, I'm glad to know that that you don't have that hanging over your head anymore. And I wish you'd have got it done sooner, and you would have been adding to it. But the fact that you got it done, and now you can kind of move on, and you're still kind of sneaking around there for a chance at a spot in Arlington. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of fun. But yeah, there's more football to play after the regular season ends.
Yeah, it's just great to, I think, be back in a position where you're coming back home. Obviously, an opponent everyone is interested in because of their head coach, and features certainly one of the best players in college football, another one that's pretty close to that as well. But it's good to be back in the position to, really have something on the line, I think. And again, you've got to do obviously more work to really continue to make it interesting as far as the conference is concerned. But you are back in a position to at least consider such things. And if you're able to pull off a win, then we'll be considering it even heavier on the other side of the weekend. Before we get out of here, Chris, just because over the last couple of weeks, really the season at large, but specifically the last couple of weeks, given that your starting quarterback was involved in this, I was just kind of curious to hit the injury report for just a moment before we wrap up the conversation. I mean, I couldn't be any more impressed with the toughness of Baron Morton. We already knew he was a tough guy, so it's not, some great surprise or some great revelation. Even saw him as a ball carrier a couple of times on Saturday, having to lower his shoulder, and I was just having Tyler Shuck flashbacks, and thankfully the result also produced one, because you get a win in Ames, Iowa. But how did we leave Ames? Was it didn't seem like the walking wounded list was quite as long as what we saw against Baylor, or what we saw against Texas Christian. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Say you're watching a game, you get hit with a hunch, an instinctual calling. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page, where you're going to place your bets to keep up with everything going down in real time as you submit that slip. And right now, FanDuel is going to get you started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with only a $5 bet out the gate at FanDuel.com.
Okay, so injury report wise, like a lot of people were asking about Micah Hudson and all that. It's a lower leg injury, as we reported on the broadcast. I think there was some concern that if you play him, it could get worse, and they want to give him the best chance to play against Colorado, so they didn't want to put him in harm's way. Dalton Merriman was back. You're still missing Bryce Ramirez. Marcus Ramon Edwards is still hurt. I'm trying to think of who else. Devin Cromwell with his shoulder that had to be walked to the locker room in Fort Worth was not available in Fort Worth. You got out of this game against Iowa State, I think fairly clean. DB Carroll missed a lot of time in that game. He kind of came out and never really returned, but he seemed to be up and about and in good spirits, but I don't think he got inserted back into the game. Mo Horn returned in this game, played great. Chapman Lewis, after missing some time in Fort Worth, played in this game, and I thought played really, really well. And then, you let off with the QB part. I think Barron's just fine. I think there was a slight chance of a misdiagnosis or a confusing diagnosis in Fort Worth, and I think they were like, man, King's X, let's throw up the roadblocks. We can't take any chances with this kid with his history. And as I think they get back, I think they're like, you're bruised, but I think he's fine. I mean, literally, I think he's fine. And he kind of ran it that way where it wasn't like, oh God, you can't touch him or he's going to be hurt or feel it or, whatever. I think it's as you see some of those deeper throws, like be a bit underthrown, I think it's fair to like ask aloud, man, does he have all of his arm strength that he's always had back? I don't know. Only he would know that, or does he just need to put a little bit more on it? But he's fine. And I thought he gutted it out. That's what I appreciated about him. He figured it out. He gutted it out. It wasn't perfect. There's a ton of throws that he would love to have back. There's also some throws that he makes that get dropped that show up on his stat sheet as well. But he's fine. I mean, he's a go. Okay. Yeah.
Can I add one more to the injury list?
Sure.
How about Joey McGuire? Who's slicing our guy in the ear, making him look like the former president? And I love the memes, by the way, after the game with McGuire's head on Trump's body underneath the flag. Fight, fight, fight. Noticed by just about everyone in the post-game interview that he has a huge slice in his right ear. And I asked you about it and was kind of wondering about maybe something that happened in practice. Is he hanging Christmas lights and took a shingle to the dome or something? This was in Ames, Iowa. You're telling me this occurred. What in the world happened?
I noticed this going into the locker room at halftime when I was talking to Coach McGuire. And he's kind of talking to me and then kind of frantically trying to get to the deal. But I'm like, I want to go time out like Zach Morrison, Saved by the Bell. We could just stop and be like, hey, dude, what's going on with all this? Whatever. And I didn't have time. And okay, so after the game, he told me, I said, because before I started recording his post-game interview, I'm like, hey, man, what happened to you? Like, did you, like, what happened to you? He's like, oh, well. So the story was you're jumping around, you're getting all hyped up in the locker room before the game. And I think one of the strength coaches maybe bounced a trash can and kind of, did this. And I think it maybe bounced the wrong way and it kind of caught the head coach. So anyway, if you would like to apply to be a strength coach for Texas Tech, they'll be looking for some help because, I'm just kidding. No.
Of all guys to hit, man.
I know. I was about to say, he's going to be like, you're bouncing around going crazy and everybody's trying to get excited and you're like, oh, and everybody gets quiet. And then I'm sure Joey he's going to make that thing teeter one way or the other. Yeah, I'm fine, guys. Keep it going. Like whatever. Right. Like, okay, I'm. But yeah, that's what happened. So, yeah, that's ultimately.
I was just curious.
He was, So after the game, he's a winner, but he's wounded. He's emotional. He's hugging his dad. A lot going on there with the head coach after that one was over. But he will survive and. Wasn't a bullet or anything. Because I said, man, did he rip his headset off? What in the heck? Because that's a weird spot to get like a cut, but yeah, he survived. He will survive and all that stuff. It's all good.
Blood, sweat, and tears, man, is what it takes every time around. Sometimes in a way that you may not expect it. All right, good stuff as always, Chris. Looking forward to what will be an exciting week. Worlds colliding, hoops in action. So we'll have plenty to get to on the hardwood front on some episodes this week. And, of course, getting ready for Red Raiders and Buffaloes as prime time comes to West Texas via a 3 o'clock kickoff. So it could be a little bit confusing. We'll make sure to keep those fun.
If you haven't ever seen it, just do me a favor because now that we've approached this week, go Google Must Be the Money by Deion Sanders, a single that he performed back in the day. It's hysterical. Me and my buddies used to jam to it way a long time ago. We got the biggest kick out of Deion Sanders, like coming up with like a rap song. Yeah. But watch the video on YouTube or whatever. It's wildly entertaining. And he's just an older version now, but a lot of what is in that video has not changed.
No, maybe an adjusted hairstyle or something along those lines. And it runs in the family, as his son has also put out a terrible song as well. So something that'll keep going for generations, I'm sure. Yeah. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it. Glad you made it back to the 806 and you brought back a win. So we appreciate that even more. looking forward to what will be a busy week, and we'll see you for the next round.
We love you all, man. Keep hope alive, everybody. Great to see the ones that I did in Ames, Iowa over the weekend, and I hope to see everybody at the arena this week at Jones AT&T on Saturday. Going to be a fun week around here. Busy, really, really busy, but fun. So keep hope alive. Enjoy your Monday, people.
Never a better time to get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you miss nothing, as the action will be coming fast and furiously as we get rolling with Grant McCaslin and the Red Raiders, and welcome back Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders to the LBK for a big one Saturday from Jones Stadium. Thanks to those everydayers for being out there every day. Appreciate you always being there along for the ride, and shout out to the Matador Mobsters as well. Appreciate you guys and gals for being there. Also, if you want to become a Matador Mob insider, hit the show notes, check out the link for a free 14-day trial. Your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text straight to your phone. All right. Appreciate your time as always. Thanks for being out there. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.